Hey everybody and welcome. Today I'm doing another mini make. This one is a pair of arms for my dress form. Now the pattern I bought is from Ruth Watkin. She is a creator over in the UK, and this pattern is actually for a half scale pair of arms. It's meant to go with her half scale dress form as well, but I cheated a little bit. I wanted it for my own dress form, so I just printed it at 200%. Because of that, the seam allowance was huge, so one of the things I did do was I redrew my seam allowance down to a 1/2 inch, because that's my personal standard seam allowance when I'm drafting my own patterns. While the pattern calls for a slightly heavier weight cotton, I had this 1 yard piece of just a basic quilting cotton in my stash, so I pulled that out to use for this. Obviously, after being rolled up tightly for 4+ years, it was in desperate need of an iron. You may be wondering why I am using a squirt bottle to iron this rather than having the water right in my iron. There are 2 reasons for that. The first is I don't like putting water in my iron. I've had too many fabrics stained by water when it sprays out. To not want to do that. And the more obvious reason is shortly after I bought my iron, it decided to take a swan dive off of my ironing board and the reservoir in the iron cracked, so I can't put water in it anyway. There are a lot of balance marks in this pattern, so I wanted to make sure that I snipped them all, and that included flipping over the one pattern piece that I had cut upside down, and I also needed to transfer all of the marking lines for the couple of pleats that are in the underarm side of the arm. What makes the arm poseable is a piece of wire that runs up the middle. I had some about 12 gauge wire from a friend of mine that I initially got for a different project. I had just enough to do this, so I ended up just cutting my piece in half and bending it into shape. The pattern also called for a little extra stiffener, so what I ended up using was some chopsticks from delivery that I had a while ago. I ended up cutting one of the chopsticks in half for the upper arm, and then I just taped them right to the wire. From there on in, I just followed the pattern directions. The very top of the shoulder on the outer arm gets eased a little bit to fit, which I did with a long stitch on my sewing machine, and then it was just a matter of pinning the upper arm to the lower arm, matching all of the notch points, and then sewing the two together. There are 2 pleats, tucks, whatever you want to call them, in the underarm. One that is at the base of the fingers, the other that marks basically the bottom of the armpit. The one in the armpit also gets a little extra circle of fabric sewn onto it, and that is then what the wire is attached to. to help keep it from moving around too much in the arm. That I just quick and easy whipped on by hand. It didn't need to be, you know, super heavy doodly sewn into it, just enough to keep it attached, and having such a long spiral also helps keep it from moving around too much as well. And once that was sewn on, came the stuffing process. To finish up the arm, I just whip stitched the opening shut from the outside. I probably should have used a matching thread, but again, this is just for my dress form and for myself, so I wasn't too worried about using white thread with my tan fabric. The last part of this was the little shoulder epaulette type piece. That is how it attaches to the dress form when it's finished. The directions call for just using a single layer and hemming it. Because I was using lighter fabric than the directions called for, and because I didn't want raw edges, I just sewed two together, turned it, and then top stitched it again. And then I just really quickly again whip stitched it on to the top edge of my arm, and then I was all done. And here is the finished right arm. The left arm is only about half finished, I will admit. I will get to it, I promise. Now, to actually install it, shall we say, onto my dress form, using that little shoulder flap, I just took some straight pins, make sure it looked like it was hanging right, and then just pinned it onto my dress form, making sure I liked the look of the angle and that I was getting a nice slope on the shoulder as well. Now, this is supposed to be a poseable dress arm, or a poseable arm, as I said, but I think my problems came from using too soft of a wire. As I said, while it was a 12 gauge wire, it is a copper wire that I used in it, which is a very soft wire. And I also might have overstuffed it a little bit, so it didn't quite want to stay bent at the elbow like it should have. Now, this shirt doesn't actually match the skirt that's on my dress form, but I had it on hand and it helped me see how it looked with clothing on, not just hanging loose. I hope you all enjoyed watching me make my half of a pair of arms for my dress form, and I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll come back again. Bye!